Three things that a tester is doing. It looks painted, looks structurally sound, and it's ready for its intended use, because I used it. I used it like a fireman. I went up and over the ladders, and I came down all the way, released the ladders, went into the ground twice, done. And so you just represented a tenant and a fireman in the use of that fire escape. So you're an assemblies tester. You're testing the assemblies. Got it? All right. The operational test. Fire escape ladder releasing mechanism operated easily. So if it's got 200 pounds of weight on it, how easy is it for me to release it? If it's got 10 pounds of weight on it, how easy? Releasing mechanism is operable without special knowledge or skill. So you don't have to like step outside, you don't have to think about it. And a lot of times try to paint the handle red. Bring a spray can of paint, and wherever the handle is, spray the handle red. So when I'm looking at this thing, I see red against brown, black, white, I see red, I kind of will follow the thing and say, oh, I yank this, it releases the ladder. Got it? Ladder will travel to the ground with minimal assistance or hesitation. Ladder remains in a stable position after reaching the ground, so when it hits the ground, it stays down, including a cantilever. Can't go back up by itself. They gotta learn how to balance cantilevers. Ladder was dropped 2 times. Ladder was able to return to its normal position, meaning you cranked it up and she went back in and locked up. After a 5-year, how comfortable are you giving this back to John now? Easy? Somebody gets hurt, what do you call? You guys just touched the red button there.
Yeah, I know.
That's
All right.
the question, how do we find him?
Well, let's define him. So the quote is very clear. A design professional, others acceptable to the official. Every registered architect can inspect this fire escape. Whether he knows how to or not doesn't mean, that's a different story. Every registered architect can look at a fire escape for you. So if you trust your life in the hands of another architect, and he has insurance or no insurance or whatever, every structural engineer can look at a fire escape, whether he knows how to do it or not, and some don't. I got things here to show you that they don't. We call them rubber stamp whores, remember? You know how many rubber stamp whores we got out there? So if you want to put your business, because you have to do your due diligence. So if you get a lawsuit of some kind and you knowingly work with somebody that doesn't know it, he gets sued and you get sued too. Because, but
How do we find his 5-year report?
no, it's, I don't understand what you mean a
His
5-year.
5-year inspection, where do we find those records?
How do you find the certification?
The certification, the
owner.
5-year
The
certification.
owner.
Each
The owner
fire
is
escape?
client's supposed to have.
Yeah, the client has copies of every
So let's
document.
say the client sold the building and there's no records.
Do a 5-year.
Brand new file.
The guy either has it or he says, I don't know, I don't think I have it. Great, I'm gonna order a 5-year for you.
So the owner is the only person that's gonna have that information.
Correct.
We cannot follow it anywhere else.
Well, currently right now, because for 50, 75 years, he's never kept that record. It may be in his building file with the building department.
Let's keep looking at it the same way. So there's no other way to see a record.
We
5 years from now, you're gonna see plenty of 5 years.
The labels that we put after each inspection, if you get a 5-year, we'll tag a label on it. I don't know if you have a copy of it, Mr. President, but we'll attach a copy so anybody who's knowledgeable at it.
So the fire escape has a.
Yeah, each one, we'll
Well, we'll show you
put
tags.
labels on fire
Yeah, we tag
escapes.
it.
We don't put labels on fire escapes.
Well,
The wind, we will for the wind, the sun, the water, that.
No, but listen, guys, this tag, we're gonna talk about tagging. How some cities tag their fire escapes with a white card, you know, and if it has that stays on the fire escape for 5 years. Clearly visible, 7 to 10 feet from the ground. And who is that for? For you guys or for the fire department?
Fire department.
And when they get there and they see a white one, do they pull out their ladders or do they just get on it? If they see a yellow means it's been repaired and ready for its intended use and under repair to get to a white. And when they get there and they see a yellow, what are the firemen gonna do? They're gonna start using it. They're gonna use it because it's ready for it. At least it got fixed, ready for its intended use. You know what I'm saying? It's on the. They can't have it non-functional. If it's got a red on it, what are you gonna do? Nobody's on it, and they may even be closing the building because that's what's required. And as you know under your Reg 4, if you have a life safety concern, can you leave that Reg 4 inspection? Until the closest firehouse does what? Sends a captain down and does what? You are relieved, then you, whoosh, and then what do they do with the owner? They figure it out. They figure out what they're going to vacate the building, whatever the situation
We
is.
also have our inspection tags that
Yeah,
we put on that.
but we'll talk about tags that are 8.5 by 11s. So let's continue on. So let's take a look at some examples of confidence tests that already exist. So if you go, here's a typical 25-point questionnaire, right? All the same information. Now, I created this over 15 years ago for Seattle after 4 people almost fell to their death. But this is a typical one. So if you go to seattle.com right now, and you go into their website on the fire protection, you're going to see my copy of my first confidence test. That's my first version. 25 questions, right? And look at their 1 year. The 1 year says, when you guys go back, even though your 1 year has a lot more questions than this one, we want to know about the bolts, about the paint, and about the doors and windows, and the ladders. Pretty similar to a Reg 4? But it assumes you did what? You can only do 1 years after a 5-year has been done. Got it?
But now we do it once a year.
No, it's backwards. It's not, no big deal.
Fire escape engineers inspect the summary video. Here we are in LA. This is the fire escape that just recently has passed a 1-year exam. But now as we look closer and it's going through its 5-year, you can see a few things that we're going to discuss that need to be done. So first of all, fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. As you can see, this fire escape has not been kept painted. Here's a full paint job, even though it passed on a 1 year. Okay? So, fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. Why the paint? The paint is what seals these joints, seals these connections from water getting into them and rotting out the structural. That's the reason for paint. So, if somebody passes it without paint on it, look at all the rust, you know? So, that's the first thing that's a lot of times is not done on a 5-year. I mean, not done on a 1 year, but it's done on a 5-year. Now, let's take a look at the rest of the fire escape in itself. Regarding the paint, it still has lead paint. Anything older than 1978 is presumed to have lead by the EPA. So whoever's going to scrape and paint this must have an EPA renovator's license. They're not going to de-lead this fire escape. They're just going to collect all the proper chips under EPA rules and guidelines, which has a $37,500 fine. And make sure that those are properly disposed of. And then they can paint. And then you want to seal all the cracks and crevices, all the joints. You want to seal it from water intrusion. So this, again, this fire escape passed a 1 year. Let's take a look at why it didn't pass a 5-year. And if it can't pass a 5-year, it can't pass a 1 year. And we'll show you why. So, look at all the damage in there, okay? So that's not properly connected to the building. And that's something that they covered up with the cement stucco, and as you can see, that's fully exposed, and that should have been identified by a Reg 4 inspector to say, hey, I can't give you a 1 year because I see some other things on this fire escape that would need a 5-year inspection in order for me to continue with my 1 years. All right, so let's go down slowly. I can already see the cables up here. These look like original cables, and I'll be able to see them down below. And the cables look to be in good order, but they are old enough that I would think that replacement would be considered at this time. So that's a major issue with rust right there. Look at all this rust right here, along, underneath all of these pieces. What do they look like when you grill them? They look like this. So that's one that's already popped. That's one that's already popped. That's one that's clearly popped. And yet it passed the 1 year. How could it pass a 1 year? Okay, checked all the connections, all original hardware. Hardware is supposed to be changed every 25 to 35 years in the lifetime of a fire escape. So you're supposed to see these square head bolts all removed, and new hex head bolts, but these are original the day it went up. So if this building is 50, 75, 100 years old, these are the original connections. And the reason you keep it painted so that water doesn't get in there. Look at all that water getting in there. And it does this, it pops. So look, I figure you can go through, see the shaft there still. Look at the nut. So it's a false. And if I look underneath here, you'll see. So this is very common. All right, take a look at the tubes, the clips. Rust jacking is happening underneath here. So these are some of the things that a 5-year inspection would identify. Look at all this. It's accumulating. Rivets. But look at all the accumulation. That is water that's going to get in there, and it's going to keep attacking these rivets all day long. Okay, let's look underneath. See that area is uninspectable? There's a through bolt, there's a through bolt, and we clearly know that we have some issues because they didn't paint this, that some materials, even though they look good, even though the bolts are here, that hit the nuts, you can clearly see that some of these are already popped, so now all of them are suspect. We have to verify one at a time. They've also sealed the lower connection into the building, and that's a through bolt there too. That one you can't even see anymore. They stuck it right over it. And as you can see how deep this is. Okay, so that's all stuck. It's a nice looking building, but that's the things you have to look at. Okay, coming down. Accumulation. All this accumulation is just going to trap water and send. Look at all the rust jacking that's happening on that clip. Not as much so, but anybody doing a Reg 4 inspection 1 year would have identified some structural issues that would be called for a 1 year. I mean, the 1 year become a 5 year. Accumulation, rust jacking. Okay, coming here, and this one you can already see the rivet already popped. The rivet already popped. Okay, so when you see the rivets already popped, they can't do a 1 year. All right, so looking underneath, all these treads look good, but knowing that there's accumulation from above, it's only a matter of time before they eat the rivet. That's just a hammered rivet. That's an indication that this is 50 to 75 years old. So a lot of times, fire escapes that are this old, they're supposed to have a change. Welded connections. See, this is supposed to be a bolted connection. So in order for me to gate this, unless I x-ray or load test this, I can't sign off a 5 year, but as soon as I put a piece of metal above this, bolt it there, I don't care about this weld anymore. All right, the handle that releases this. It's kind of in a weird location. I have to go, and again, this is the 1 year pass. So as you can see, it's a 1 year annual. Okay, so they would have, had they seen, look at all the rust jacking in that corner right there. Okay, that person who inspected this would have said, I can't pass this on a 1 year. Look at all the rust jacking inside here. Rust jacking in that connection holding the whole entire stairs. Inability to verify certain connections. Okay, there's a plate here. Okay, and this is the release. The release is in the wrong side, and it looks like it's ready to pop. Okay, so definitely needs a paint job. Water accumulation is good behind it. Another rivet that's popped right there. So this is what occurs when you inspect a fire escape on a 1 year. You're really looking for a couple things on a 1 year. Does this ladder, when I release it, go down slowly, 2 to 3 feet per second, hit the ground and stay down? Can I do that twice? Is the mechanism in a good space? Does it have a chain? Does the windows work getting to the fire escape? So a Reg 4 is a system, so you're verifying that the system looks good all the way up to the roof. And you walk, it looks like it's been kept painted, and that any moving parts do drop, and that you can get from the roof to grade. As soon as anybody sees something that is an indication that there's a structural concern, it turns into an automatic 5 year. Okay, so knowing that you see the rust pop, pieces of steel pop, the fire escape has all original hardware, has not been kept painted, usually is an indication that they still get paid for their 1 year inspection, but it's a 5 year inspection now. Okay. I'm going to have another one just like this on the back side. This weight box has to be greased so that it slides properly, and at the same time we need to verify that the cables are in good order. They seem to be in good order, but a lot of times if this is the original cable, they want to swap these out. They're inexpensive, and you want to grease the cables up there also, and the pulleys. Okay, on a 1 year. That's the routine maintenance, is to grease it, let it make sure it drops 2 to 3 feet per second, and that this mechanism here is in a way that people can use it. And a lot of times this mechanism would be most likely somewhere here, so that when you turn it, it turns away from you and you can access, and that you begin to change your drops. Okay? And a very important piece of information, during any construction, all fire escapes must be certified first under NFPA rule 1910.37, that you must have 2 means of egress during construction, buildings under construction. So any questions, fire escape engineers, 866-649-0333.
Can he have a piece of wood there?
What was that for?
Yeah, people were breaking into the building, so he blocked that, said, dude, you can't have a piece of wood there because that prohibits the firemen from getting in, your people from getting out. But just so you know, because of OSHA 1910.37, write this down, OSHA 1910.37. It says that during renovations, remodeling of any structure, residential or commercial, you must maintain 2 means of egress at all times. So does that mean you fix the fire escape first or last? First. So if somebody's gutting a building, doing anything, you gotta go in there first and certify the fire escape under a 5-year, not a 1-year.
You need at least one.
Huh?
You need at least one to be working.
No, all of them need to be working.
Well, I just see that because they ask for one.
No?
Here in LA.
Well, then again, there's a merge now, so the fact that you're stepping into liability land, well, who said that? When you were in court, like, who said, you remember the guy's name, like, oh, it was a guy with a captain, he had a badge, and you're gonna be in trouble, because what happens is, the law is very, it's an OSHA requirement. You must have 2 means of egress, and so if this building has a staircase in the middle, a fire escape over there, and a fire escape over there, all fire escapes need to be working, so that you can stop demoing the building. If you can't, there's another thing you do, and I'll show you the scaffolding in a second, that you just scaffold. So don't think you have to fix the fire escape. It's either fix the fire escapes and get to work, or put up scaffolding and get to work. So you're not gonna shut down the project, but they don't have a choice. Every fire escape has to be working and certified, under a 5-year, not a 1-year. And by the way, this is good for John to understand. Fire escape assemblies tester. You get to a building and it doesn't have a cantilever, or it doesn't have a drop ladder. Do you still do an annual Reg 4 on it? Yes, you do. Because, no, this is what happened. Everybody thought, you're testing the system, right? The assembly's test. So guess what? Is there a ladder to the roof on that building? And is there a permanent stair to the ground on that building? And do they want you to test the entire assemblies? So you get to a fire, because I asked this question before and I got kind of gray. You have to inspect every fire escape, whether it has a cantilever, a ladder, or a fixed stair to the ground, because what do you have to represent?
Oh, so if it's stationary, of course.
Stationary or it's a hydraulic?
No. Before, everybody thought that the only thing you inspected was, not before. So let's go back to the Franco times and on. It was really about inspecting cantilevers and drop ladders. And whenever you get to a fixed stair, because I tried to get an exam on a fixed stair, and said, no, I can only do an examination on a drop. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's the whole system. It's an assemblies test. So I'm just making you guys aware. Every fire escape, whether it has a ladder, a cantilever, or a fixed stair to the ground, must be examined. Because you're going to go from the roof onto the thing, come all the way down, and hit the ground, whether you use a cantilever, a ladder, or a fixed stair to the ground. Is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
So you're testing the whole thing. Okay? So now you have the wood back here. So you guys saw what happened, right? So this guy out of Culver City signed the 1 year. This is a hotel that's going to come online in 1 month. And what do they need, John? This is the Culver City calling us to say, no, we don't want a 1 year, we need a 5 year. So that's that whole thing. The state has put this out. Certain cities are ahead of the game saying, hey, we want 5 years. Even before ordinances come into play. I'm getting various people are already aware of the 5, and they're not waiting for state, for local enforcement to tell them what to do. Their insurance company is going to come into play. And when an insurance company gives you 30 days to meet the requirement, they don't care about John, they don't care about building departments, they don't care about anybody. Obviously, you can take not take as long as you want, but you have to have it fixed in a reasonable time. But sometimes, ordinances that take years to get into check boxes, insurance company says, I want it now. Oh, but the city's never, we want it now, otherwise we're going to cancel your insurance. And your insurance is canceling. So this is the front fire escape, right? Treads are good, things are popping, cement was bad. Yet the guy signed off on it.
What happened?
No, I just inspected this yesterday.
Who is it?
No, it doesn't matter who it is.
I saw his tag.
What you know?
Well, it's not about who it is.
Yeah.
This is you.
Not me.
This is you, because sometimes you guys have been walking on fire escapes that never had a 5-year, and you've taken this risk. You've let something go, and here's the reason why this happens. Because a lot of times, you guys rely on people to be professional. And so people haven't touched these fire escapes in 50 years. So the guys who built these things don't no longer build them. The guys who used to fix these things no longer fix them. And you know who you have left? Remember the $3,000 guy?
Yeah.
What's his profession? Paint. And then if he has a cousin, who is he?
Welder?
A welder. And if they have a friend, who is he? An iron worker. And is there any money for them in fire escapes? If the only ones ever making any money for 50 years has been painters, is when an iron worker says, come on down, a guy says, oh, the building owner wants you to come down and give him a price. He goes, why? He already got the magic 3 numbers, right? He got a $3,000 from the painter, he got a $13,000 from the welder, and he's not going to get a $33,000 bill from me. You think he's going to pick me? He hasn't picked me in 50 to 75 years. You think he's going to pick me now?
Does they have a choice, you know?
Oh, wait a second. If it comes in on an inspection, that's different. Because now the inspection tells you everything that needs to be fixed. And who checks the inspection? Who checks the work that's going to be done? Because he inspects in a 5-year, there is work that is done. So who guides the welder or the ornamental guy? John, the building department, or this guy? That guy, what, 3 visits, an initial visit, a mid-visit, and a final visit, then signs off at the end. So who keeps an eye on the worker? That guy. He signs off a certificate. That goes to who? And he puts his stamp on it. That it's structured.
How expensive is for him to certify that? What's the rough?
Just
roughly.
I gotta get
The
your-
cost is not always, the cost is not always the, you know, the inspection side of it. The cost really is 50 to 75 years of fire escapes never being touched. So to give you examples, some fire escapes, we're doing one in Indianapolis, 17-story. It's $389,000 to fix it,
For a 17-story?
for a 17-story.
380, you say 400.
Yeah. So some of the repairs on a typical 5-story could be 50 to 75,000. You know why? Because when you build it, it's really cheap. Put up a platform, put up a stair, brand new tread, brand new bolts, go along, put it up. But when you take it apart, it's like a deck of cards. You ever play Jenga? Okay? Because if this thing, if you don't know what you're doing, these things will eat you.
So will the 5-year help maintain the fire escape for a long period of time? Is that what you're?
Oh, yeah. Just so you know, on a typical fire escape, you want 15 to 25 year structural warranty from the vendor. Because when you take a connection apart, and you clean this all out, and you replace the steel that was worn with new steel, if needed, and you replace or repair, sister, the steel that's there, if needed, and in between these two, after you remove 100% of the internal rust, and then you prime the interior, and then you inject 35 to 50-year paintable silicone, which it's never seen in its life, and you squish this back together and you tighten a brand new bolt into it. So what fails fire escape? The bolt or the connection expanding? The bolt never fails. If the bolt is repaired correctly, it's sealed, the bolt will never fail you. But you allow the connection to grow because you haven't been keeping it painted. What failed, the connection or the bolt? The connection. Who inspects connections? So if you have relationships with engineers and architects out there, you don't have to use, you can use anybody you want. As long as they have workers' comp, liability, and errors in emissions insurance. You may be satisfied with just 2. You may say, no, we have a guy that we really trust. He's got his own workers' comp, because when he gets on it, he gets hurt, he pays himself. You know, pays his own medical bills. He's got liability in case one of the pieces falls, hits a car down below and breaks a windshield. That guy, you know. And he doesn't have errors in emissions insurance. He tried, he can't find it, and you're happy with it, great. We have all 3 because not only being an expert witness, have I seen the stupidest things in the world? I don't want any liability to be 300,000, 3 million, or 30 million. And so it covers the territory. And these fire escapes have killed the service side of things. So like I said, one of my guys, his father was 57, I'm 57. His father fell 7 stories to his death, changing a bulb. 7 stories in Chicago. All right, so now let's do the back one. Is this one any problem with the treads? Same building, this is a long-ass hotel in Culver City. Van Buren.
Fire escape engineers inspect the summer video. Here we are in Los Angeles. We're conducting a 5-year inspection on a fire escape that was just recently passed this month on a 1-year. Let's take a look at what's required on a 5-year and what's required on a 1-year. Fire escapes must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. So obviously this fire escape has not been kept painted. Plenty of evidence that it has not been kept painted. And because of that, it should have passed the 1-year. Because it must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. It's one of the requirements. Why do you keep it painted? You keep it painted so that water doesn't get into the connections. So any fire escape that has not been kept painted is automatically making every connection suspect above and beyond other things. So let's take a look at this fire escape now. Just in continuation with the paint though, EPA has deemed that any fire escape older than 1978 is deemed to have lead paint. So